A lot of people ask me on a pretty regular basis about great corners on which to watch drivers, to observe the sort of detail that we often talk about on the show. And at most circuits, I can always think of at least one corner. I have to confess that at the Circuit of Americas, I do find it very difficult to find any corner on which you can actually see that sort of detail. I don't know why it is, because there is obviously topography, and I think Herman Tilke's done a very good job given the geography of the local area. But having said that, the corners almost seem to define themselves in the sense that, anyway, let me put it back. I can't actually tell the difference between Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton around here. I can't see the sort of detail that you would see on a circuit like Bahrain or especially Sepang or Silverstone. You can't see that here. Everybody kind of looks the same, and I guess that's reflected by the way the chassis are so clearly in order of performance on the grid. There's not a lot you can do. There's some great, having said that, there's some wonderful vantage points. And if you were going with your family and mates or friends and going into the grandstand with your beers and your hot dogs, great place, particularly turn one, obviously, and under braking at the end of the back straight. I know I've got a lot of friends down there as well. That's a good place to watch, spectacular place to watch. But whether you would actually see any difference in style between Felipe Massa and Valtteri Bottas, good example, would be dubious, I think. So that's just one of the characteristics of the Circuit of Americas. In itself, that is a characteristic, I guess. It was pretty cold in the build-up to the race. The teams, I think, after last year's race, did expect to find more garage space. The garages for a Tilke circuit are relatively small here, to the point where in order to operate well during the day, the tyres, etc., have to be out the back of the garage, Brazilian Grand Prix style. But it was interesting to see them bringing all the tyres back in overnight because it was so cold, and the effect, obviously, of the cold on the tyres would have been pretty critical. So there hasn't been any change from last year to this, and that's a good thing. I don't like to see circuit promoters, whether they be governments or private investors, having to spend money upon money upon money to keep the event going. And let's just hope, keep fingers crossed, that this does actually eventually have a future in terms of being not a profitable, but certainly a circuit that pays its way and justifies its existence. At the moment, one imagines that with the overheads that they've had to spend over the last couple of years to get the thing to the state that it's in, it is a very, very expensive proposition. The big news, of course, was, lots of news this week. Heikki Kovalainen doing a nice job stepping into the Lotus, as he would, really, with the amount of experience he's got, and he's been doing a bit of running for Caterham. He knows the Renault engine. He knows those guys in the team. It wasn't going to be a huge leap for him, so no real surprises there. For me, the real surprise, I have to say, is that they didn't run Davide Valsecchi, because the watchers of the regular viewers of the show will know that as long ago as the trip to the Philippines I did with Lotus, that I really endorse their decision to have Davide as a third driver. He's a very quick Italian GP2 champion, reigning champion, and crying out for an opportunity to prove his talent. He's definitely got the character, I think, to be very successful at Formula One level. Yet to be seen how he would go in terms of absolute skill. But all signs are that it's there. And if you spend all year not doing any testing, doing your simulator work, keeping fit, being ready to step in whenever necessary. And don't forget, he did have a disappointment in terms of the number of days he could do in the car at Silverstone as well. That it's a shock for him, I think, not to have got that drive. I can only put it in the context of 77, when Niki Lauda pulled out of the Ferrari team for the last two races, having won the championship. And Ferrari put Gilles Villeneuve in the car for two races, young Canadian, just to see what he was like. And we all know what happened there. And I think it's a shame that the next generation is not there being given that opportunity. But I feel very sorry for Davide. I just hope it's not the end of his Formula One career and he can pick up the pieces from this. Felipe Massa to Williams, I think that is it's a slightly unimaginative choice. I can see the logic when they're sitting in their conference room at Williams, the board that is answerable to the public, if you like, flotation, secure, experienced driver. Let's get good feedback for the car, because if we have another car with problems, we need great technical feedback. I mean, that's a bit of a cliche, I think, and we've seen that time and again not to be the case. Rubens Barrichello at Williams, being a very good example, came to Williams with all that technical feedback and knowledge, and yet couldn't do anything about that car at all. And I suspect if it's a bad car next year at Williams, let's hope it isn't, I don't think Felipe will be able to do any more with it than Pastor Maldonado or Rubens Barrichello. There's a bit of a groundswell out there of the line that Williams pleased to get rid of Maldonado. He's inconsistent. He's not a Grand Prix winner anymore, or whatever it is. I don't buy that. For me, Maldonado's got out of a Williams situation that could have proved difficult for him. I imagine selling another year at Williams to the Venezuelan government wouldn't have been the easiest job in the world, and he's now out there on the market. And it'll be interesting to see where he goes. The stories this weekend, and I have to say they are stories, but nonetheless, I go for them, that Eric Boullier, I think, has made it a little bit more difficult to secure Maldonado if he wanted him by saying so publicly how much he rated Nico Hülkenberg and that he would sign him if only he could bring some money to the team, because it doesn't actually reflect particularly well on Pastor Maldonado, who, let's face it, is a very fast racing driver who's won a Grand Prix and qualified very well on occasions. This guy is not slow. Yes, he's got some rough edges. Yes, he's a Latino, but he's easy to read. He's easy to work with. There's a lot of potential and development there. And unlike a lot of drivers out there, he does have the ability to go to the government of his country and get support. And that has to be applauded in Formula One terms at a time when many teams are finding it difficult to raise money. So the story here at the moment is that he may well go to Sauber now, because he's saying to himself, and his dad's probably saying to him, well, if Lotus F1 don't want you on talent, then let's go somewhere else. And you can understand how they feel. As for Nico Hülkenberg, it's obviously difficult for him. More and more doors are shutting for Nico. I did say on the show, and I repeat it, that if I was Nico Hülkenberg, I would look at the way Pastor Maldonado has gone about raising money. Yes, he's not going to do it out of the German government, but there is a new door opening at Sauber with the Russians, and Nico is the sort of guy with his personality who could spend a lot of time trying to generate more money out of that Russian connection and securing himself a long-term position at Sauber with some very, very good people around him operating that team. That's what I would advise him to do if I was managing him, but we'll see again. I mean, probably has the view, I'm a fast racing driver, I will go to the team that wants me, and I'm not going to go out there looking for sponsorship because I should be hired on my own merit. Well, one can see that, but equally this is 2013, 2014, and a lot of teams are struggling. Speaking of which, struggling commercially, that is. Speaking of which, my column this month in F1 Racing, which I wrote a while ago, I was saying that I was looking forward to December 2, this being the date when McLaren are going to be announcing their new title sponsorship. And I was slightly sceptical that they would actually do it on December 2, because the signs are that they run out of patience, obviously, with Carlos Slim, with the Sergio Perez connection. Nothing materialised there, and they're having to move on. And so, lo and behold, we do actually get words, wheels within wheels, suggesting that the December 2 deadline is going to come and go, and they're not going to announce their title sponsorship. There'll be a bit of flannel about that, saying, well, let's wait until we do the new car and the new year, whatever. But you don't, if you're a team like McLaren and you say at the beginning of the year, we are going to announce a title sponsorship in December 2, and you then don't do it, that is quite a big statement in itself. Nothing more needs to be said. It is a tough time for teams, and if McLaren can't raise the sort of money they want for title sponsorship, and we're talking comfortably over 40 million now per annum, then that this is a different economy in which we're now working. It's taken a while for the global recession to have its impact on Formula One, and obviously all the tightening of legislation, but there is a quantum shift as well. You can see a lot of new companies, big companies, buying circuit signage, buying into Formula One as an event, and not signing with teams, and that's an interesting development that we should be talking more about in the future, I think. Won't leave McLaren though without congratulating them on their choice of Kevin Magnussen. What a creative, refreshing decision. Kevin, as viewers of the show will know, we put a lot of video out again, video edits this week of the show that Kevin did with us recently. I invited them onto the show because I really do think Kevin Magnussen is a potential world champion. And obviously then I was hoping that he would get a Formula One drive. I know that Toro Rosso were interested in him, but obviously they couldn't do anything because he wasn't a Red Bull driver and he was a McLaren signed driver. But I think the amount of interest that they showed did help galvanise, to use a word I think that Christian Horner might use on the pit wall, agitate, galvanise, was something that led towards the decision. Also, Kevin's done some very good days with Rob Wilson, and I know that Rob thinks very highly of him. And one of his key characteristics is that he is an incredibly supple, shock-absorbed driver, as Rob would put it, and that gives him the ability to progress to the next level, the level of a great driver, as distinct from a very, very fast, creative driver, because he is so supple. There are a lot of guys out there who are very quick right now, may even be slightly quicker than Kevin is right now, but they're more rigid in the way they drive. Kevin has this ability to feel the surface of the road, as Rob would say, and as recently as the Vallelunga tyre test, McLaren bowled over by his by the precision of his thinking and how quickly he was able to come to decisions about where they were going. So congratulations to them. Congratulations to Kevin Magnussen. Great to see a round hole in a peg in a round hole, because this is a great thing for Formula One to see him in that car. Kimi Räikkönen undergoing back surgery. It was interesting, I think, that Lotus put out a press release saying, we're very pleased to hear that Kimi, the operation went very well. You would imagine, actually, that press release should be coming from Ferrari, not Lotus. Why do they? Of course, everybody wants Kimi to be in great shape, but it seemed a bit odd to me that Lotus are saying that, bearing in mind we're never going to see him in a Lotus again, and it's actually Ferrari who should be saying, well, let's hope we don't have two geriatrics with bad backs driving for us next year. So that's good. Oakley coming into Formula One in a bigger way with both Ferrari drivers next year. That was announced this weekend here. I only mention that because we have an association with Oakley on my blog, so that'll be fun to see. I think they're going to do a line of Ferrari shades now as well. And finally, well, two things. Secondly, obviously, two final things. The Macau Grand Prix, that is where the FIA president is this weekend. I think that's a good choice by him. Nothing against the American Grand Prix, but I think it's what a Grand Prix, what a weekend that is. The Windsor Arch Macau Grand Prix, very pleased to see it named that way, is one of the blue ribbon events for the lower rung category of single-seater racing, and we'll be reporting on that next week. Such a shame there's not better coverage of it, particularly. It's the sort of thing it should be live streamed around the world, I think, but anyway, it isn't. And finally, best wishes to Dario Franchitti. Everyone's saying, isn't it sad that Dario's been ruled out of ever racing again? I think it's wonderful, to be honest. Because I'm a huge fan of Dario, like him very much. I know how much he's got left in him to put into motor racing, and he's had such a great career. I'm glad he's out of it now, and he can get on to much bigger and better things. So, Dario, congratulations on the rest of your life and everything that's ahead of you, and very, very speedy recovery from all the injuries that you've had there. That's all we have time for on this week's American-themed edition of The Racer's Edge. Join us next week. We'll have Craig Scarborough going through all the technical details that he's seen this weekend, and looking forward to the Brazilian Grand Prix, of course. Anthony Rollinson looking through the latest edition of F1 Racing. In the meantime, many thanks to Andy Middlehurst, to Antonio Sabato Jr. See you next week. Thanks for watching.